We begin today the Gemara on Daf Lamed Ches Amud Aleph, towards the top of the Yom, the third line from the top. We were speaking about the Psukim in Torah, behemshich to the Mishnah that spoke about teaching somebody Chumash when you made a neder that he can't have a nor from you. So the Gemara said that the Psukim in Torah have different aspects to it, and it's all a halacha l'Moshe misinai, that he said exactly all the punctuation, the even the notes of the Psukim and so on. So the Gemara here brings one more inyan about this. Omar Rab Acha bar Ada b'marave paskin lahadem psuka l'tlasa psukin. In Eretz Yisrael, the following pasuk that we have as one pasuk, they divided it into three different psukim. Vayemer Hashem al Moshe hine anochi ba elecha ba'av ha'anon. The Gemara doesn't quote the full pasuk, but the pasuk there continues and says, the Eibusher says to Moshe, I'm coming to you in the thickness of the cloud. And then the pasuk says, Ba'avur yishma am bedabri imach. The people will hear that I'll speak to you, v'gam b'cha yaminu lo'elam, and they'll believe in you. And then it says, Vayaged Moshe es divrei am al Hashem. And Moshe Rabbeinu spoke these words to the people. Or actually, sorry, he said the words of the people to the Eibusher. So they divided it into three different psukim. Why is it into three different psukim? So the Marsha says, because the first part of the pasuk is saying that the Eibusher speaks to Moshe Rabbeinu in the thickness of the cloud. That's not connected to the next part. When it says afterwards that the Yidden will hear, it's not referring to them hearing Hashem speak to Moshe when he's in the thickness of the cloud. So that's a separate thing. That the people will listen to Moshe Rabbeinu and that they'll believe to him. That's the second point. And then there's a third point in the pasuk. Vayaged Moshe es divrei am al Hashem. Moshe gave over the words of the Yidden to the Eibusher. It's three different points, and that's why it's divided into three different psukim. At least in Eretz Yisrael, that's how they had it. That's what the Gemara says. Weiter the pasuk says, Omar Rab Chame bar Chanina. Rab Chame bar Chanina said, Lo hasher Moshe. How did Moshe Rabbeinu become rich? Elam mipsoltan shaluchais. From the psilis of the luchais, from the leftovers of the luchais, that when he had to prepare the second set of luchais, and then there was leftover of this, like it says, the luchais was made from samperin, and it was made from sapphire, very, very expensive stone. So when Moshe Rabbeinu prepared this, so what happened? He got rich from the leftovers of this sapphire. Shanem apsal lucha. It says lucha means shnei luch savarim kerishainim psaltan shalacha yehei. That the psilis of this will be yours. So there's two interesting things that the Rebbe says about this. Number one, there's a discussion about this regarding the stones. How is Moshe Rabbeinu allowed to keep those leftovers? Who did it belong to? Maybe it belonged to the Yidden. It's not his to keep. So there's a discussion about that, and the Rebbe brings the Gemara in the end of Baba Kama. When you give a craftsman a stone to smooth out, to chisel out, so he's allowed to keep the leftovers for himself. So over here, the Gemara is saying that Moshe Rabbeinu kept this for himself. There's a big discussion about this. Another point that Rebbe says is, when it says here that Moshe Rabbeinu became rich of the psilis of the luchais, what the Gemara really means to say is that by Moshe Rabbeinu, his entire richness wasn't something for a purpose for itself. It's all tuffle to his Torah. His whole richness was only for the purpose of him to be able to learn even more Torah. The Rebbe brings it like the Rambam says, when a person has everything he needs, begashmius, what's the point of it? In order to give him the ability to be able to learn even more Torah. So by Moshe Rabbeinu, he was extremely rich, and all of his richness was a psilas to his Torah. That was his ikar. Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina said, Le'nitne Torah ela leMoshe u'lezarei. The Torah was given only to Moshe Rabbeinu and to his descendants. Shenema, the pasuk says, Ksav l'cha. It says, write the Torah for you, and it also says Psal l'cha. Ma psaltan shalacha, just like the psiles of the luchas we just says belongs to Moshe Rabbeinu itself. Ksavan shalacha, so too the ksav of the Torah belongs to Moshe Rabbeinu itself. Now Moshe nog ba toivesain. Moshe Rabbeinu behaved with this Torah that the Eibusher gave to him with a very good eye. V'nasna liYisrael, and he gave it to the Yidden. And Moshe Rabbeinu, the pasuk says, Toiv ayin hu yevaydach v'gaimer. That with a good eye, Moshe Rabbeinu was benched. The Gemara is going to explain this now, but even at this point, when it says here that the Torah was given only for Moshe Rabbeinu, it doesn't refer to the fulfillment of the Taryag mitzvahs. It refers to the limud of Torah, to be able to learn the chachma of Torah. That's what it's referring to. But obviously, the Taryag mitzvahs was given to all the Yidden. But the learning of the chachma of the Torah, without the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu gave us the kayach, we wouldn't be able to learn the chachma of the Torah. But even on this itself, the Gemara will ask, and the Gemara will explain a different shot. Most of Rav Chizde, but it says in the pasuk, "Va'isi tziva Hashem be'esehi l'lamed eschem," that the Eibusher taught me the Eibusher commanded me to teach you. Teach you means to teach you the wisdom of the Torah as well. So it wasn't given just to Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Gemara says, no, it's not necessarily a raya. The way to understand this pasuk is, V'oisi tziva. Hashem commanded me, meaning He gave me really the chachma of the Torah. V'ani lochem. And I decided to give it over to you. Another pasuk the Gemara brings, look, I taught you the chukim and mishpatim. Kashet tzivani Hashem alakai. So over here as well, it seems to say clearly that the Eibusher commanded him that he should teach the chukim and mishpatim to Yidden. So again, the Gemara says, not necessarily. Oisi tziva, the Eibusher commanded me. In other words, it was from Moshe Rabbeinu himself. And vani lachem, I decided to give it to you, to all the Yidden. A third pasuk the Gemara brings, it says, Va'ata, this is in the end of Parshas Azinu, Va'ata, or right before Parshas Azinu, Va'ata kisvu lechem es hashira azais, you should write this shira for all the Yidden. So it says clearly that it's being written for all the Yidden. So the Gemara says, but maybe it's only going on the shira of Azinu, Hashira luchuda, it only goes on the shira itself, it doesn't go on the entire Torah that's for all Yidden to learn. But the Gemara says, but what does it say there? Lamantia li ashira azais le'eid b'vnei Yisrael, that the shira should be as a witness for all the Yidden. So that doesn't refer only to the shira; it refers to the entire Torah that says testimony for all the Yidden. So we see over here that it refers to this, that Moshe Rabbeinu writes the Torah for the entire Yidden. So what does it mean when we said before that the Torah was given to Moshe Rabbeinu and he, out of his goodness, decided to give it to the Yidden? Allah says the Gemara, Pulpula ba'alma. What it's referring to is the Eibusher gave Moshe Rabbeinu, when he gave him the second set of luchais, he gave Moshe Rabbeinu the deep discussions of Torah, the pilpul of Torah, the Gemara, all the deep pulpulim of Torah. That was a gift from Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what it was referring to. Sagt the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu mashre shchinosai. The Eibusher does not bring down this shchina to dwell el al gibar. Only someone. So this is referring to nevuah. When a person has to be a prophet, so the Eibusher only brings this. Who could be a prophet? You have to be a gibar, to be mighty, usher, rich, chacham, wise, va'anav, and humble. And v'kulam Moshe. All of these we learn from Moshe Rabbeinu. Gibar, where do we see that Moshe Rabbeinu was strong? D'chsev vayifreis es ha'oyel ala mishkan. Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that spread the oil, which refers to the yiriyos, the covering of the Mishkan. He spread it over the Mishkan. V'amamar, the Master explained regarding this pasuk, Moshe Rabbeinu parsai. Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that spread it over the Mishkan. Uksiv, it says regarding the height of the Mishkan, Esa amas oirech hakeresh v'gayim. The height of the Mishkan was 10 amas, and Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that was tall enough to be able to lift up this yiriyos and place it over the Mishkan. So what does that mean? Moshe Rabbeinu was extremely tall. If he was extremely tall, the Gemara is assuming that he was very strong. But the Gemara says there's no raya from here that he was strong. Eime the arech v'katan. Maybe he was very tall, but he was still small in his power. Not necessarily was he strong. Ella, the Gemara says, Minadenkra. Here, the pasuk that we mentioned, regarding the luchais. From this pasuk, it says, et place b'shnei haluchais, that Moshe Rabbeinu grabbed onto the two luchais, v'ashlichem al shtei yodeh v'shabrem, and he threw it down from his hands and he broke the luchais. Now, how big were these luchais? V'tanya, we learned in the Braisa, haluchais arkan shisha v'rachban shisha. It was square, 6 by 6 amas, which is about, let's say, 7.5, 8 feet wide. Well, chayre amas, no? Maybe making a mistake. Is it referring to tfachim? Okay, tfachim, thank you. Va'avya, so it's actually not even that huge. Va'avya and shloisha, and it was thick, 3 tfachim. And Moshe Rabbeinu went and threw it down. So the fact that he took these luchas and he threw it down, strong enough for it to break, so that means he was strong. That's the pshat that the Rashi says, but others are asking this because Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Shemayim, so even if he would have just dropped it from the high distance that he was, just from the fall, it would have broken, it would have shattered. So what's the chiddush that he was strong? So others say the fact that he was able to hold it, it's not 100% clear over here in the Gemara. It doesn't spell out exactly how this is a proof for his strength.
It could be because of the way the material that it's made, it was heavy material.
Heavy material, that he held it, okay, so not just, okay. Okay, psalacha, asher, sorry, missed one word, asher. How do we know Moshe Rabbeinu was rich? We said before, psalacha, psalta, and shalacha yehi. The psalis of the luchais belongs to you. Chacham, from where do we see Moshe Rabbeinu was wise? But now, what does it mean, chacham over here? As we'll see in a moment in the Gemara, what chacham means. It doesn't mean the simple sense, chachma. Rav Shmuel Damri Tavayu. So they both said the chachma we're speaking about over here is chamishim share binon nivru ba'ilam. 50 gates of wisdom are created in the world. And v'kulam nitnu l'Moshe. They're all given to Moshe Rabbeinu chaser achas, missing one level. Shenema, as it says in the pasuk, v'tachasreyu ma'at melikim. One level that he was lacking melikim. What does melikim mean? So if you look here into the Ran says that v'tachasreyu ma'at melikim is referring to this, that his understanding of godliness, of lakus, the emes of the Eibishter. Lashon of the Ran is Yidias Hashem Yisbarach ala mitosai, to know the Eibishter for His truth. And Moshe Rabbeinu knew all levels of godliness besides one level. That's the Chachma of Moshe Rabbeinu we're speaking about over here. The Rebbe also speaks about this Gemara over here. It speaks about basically a Navi. In order to be a Navi, you have to have all these qualifications. So the Rebbe explains, Onav is the qualification to have bittul, in order for the Shekhinah to dwell in you. The others that the Gemara says, Gibor, Asher, Chacham, is the opposite really. It's the shleimus of the person. In order for a person to be a Navi, he has to be ish shalem, not only beruchnius, but even begashmius, to be 100% b'shleimus in every area, and then the Shekhinah will dwell upon him. And it's interesting, you see from this Gemara that even gashmius, the gevura, shows on a shleimus of a person. One of the rayos of this, by the way, is also from this week's parsha. When it comes to Yaakov Avinu, and it describes the fact that he was able to flip off the heavy rock that was on top of the be'er, that you needed many people to take off. That shows that Gashmi's the Gevurah is a Maila. Amar Rabbi Yechanan said, Kol ha-neviim ashirim hayu. All Nevi'im were rich. Minala, mi Moshe, mi Shmuel, mi Amos, and mi Yoina. We find by these 4 Nevi'im that they were rich. Moshe, where do we see by Moshe Rabbeinu? The pasuk says, Loi chamayr echad mehem nesasi. Moshe Rabbeinu says, by the whole machlekes of Kairach, I didn't ever take one donkey from anybody. So what is the chiddush of this pasuk that he didn't take a donkey? If he's saying that I never took a donkey without paying for it, what is that? What's the chiddush of it? So this is excluding someone else that's a ganev, that's a thief, and takes the donkey without paying. Well, of course, that's not the chiddush of Moshe Rabbeinu that he wasn't a ganev. Elo, what it's saying is that Moshe Rabbeinu, even to pay, he didn't have to take a donkey to rent a donkey. Why not? So right now the Gemara is saying because he was so rich, he had everything of his own, so he didn't have to take from anyone anything. Frek the Gemara, but maybe actually the reverse is true. Maybe because he was so poor, so he had nothing to pay in order to rent a donkey. So therefore here from this pasuk there's takano raya. Elamim psalacha, the pasuk we brought before, psalacha psilton yehei shalcha, that the psiles of the luchais will be yours, and that's from where he became rich. You know, it pshat over here in the Gemara, the Mefarshim say the reason why the Gemara lechatchila brought from Lech HaMoyer Echad is because the psilas that he got from the luchais only happened later, much like after Matan Torah, after he got the second set of luchais. So the Gemara was trying to say that there's a raya maybe that Moshe Rabbeinu was rich from the beginning, from this that he said, I never took a donkey from anyone. But the Gemara in the end says, no, from there's no raya. We only have a raya from when he got the second set of luchais, that from then he was rich. So Rashi al Torah actually says that when he got the second set of luchas and he got this psilas and this asha harbe, that's when he became extremely wealthy. But he was already wealthy from before. Now Shmuel, similar by Shmuel, the Gemara brings a pasuk first, like it says by Moshe, D'chsiv hinini anu bi neged Hashem and neged Mishichai, es sher mi lekachti v'chamer mi lekachti. Did I ever take an ox from anybody or a donkey from anybody? So here as well we see the same thing like by Moshe Rabbeinu. I didn't take anything from anyone. Now again the Gemara says, doesn't mean to say I didn't take it without paying. So what does that mean? The Maila of Shmuel is excluding someone else that's a Ganav that takes it without paying. What's this big Maila here? It's saying that even to rent, to pay, he didn't have to take, because he had everything of his own. So again the Gemara asks, Dilme the Ani Have, maybe he was poor and therefore he couldn't afford to rent anything. Ela mehacha. So rather the raya is from a different pasuk. It says Uchuvasai haramasa, that Shmuel returned to his home, which was in Ramah, Kisham Beisai, and that's where the home of Shmuel is. The continuation of the pasuk there, it says there, actually not the continuation of the pasuk. There's a previous pasuk that over there it speaks about Shmuel traveling around, and then it says he came to his home in his. And Kisham Beisa, that's where his house is. So the Gemara now explains, what does it mean, that's where his house is? The Marsha explains, why does it have to say Kisham Beisa? It should have said, Shuvasai lebeisai haravasa. He came to his home in Ramah. That would mean that his house was where? In Ramah. Why does it say Kisham Beisa is like sort of a separate thing? So V'amar Rava said on this, Kol makaim shahalach, wherever Shmuel went, Beisa imay. He always had all of his comfort and all of the things that he had in his home. Wherever he was, he had all of his furniture and everything else he needed. And this shows the riches of Shmuel. Wherever he traveled, it's like Lahavdil today. The president travels, they bring the entire everything, they bring it all over, and wherever he goes, he has everything with him. So Shmuel traveled, he was so rich, he had everything with him. That's the raya. Okay, the Gemara continues and says, Amar Rava, now another detail regarding what was brought up before, that it said Moshe Rabbeinu said he didn't take anything from any of the Yidden, and it said by Shmuel also. Shmuel said I didn't take anything from the Yidden. So Amar Rava, Gadol mashanema b'Shmuel Yoseh mishanema b'Moshe. What it says by Shmuel is actually even more than what it says by Moshe. By Moshe Rabbeinu it says, Lo chamer echad mehem nasasi. I didn't take any donkey from anybody. Da'afilu b'schar, meaning even to pay. He didn't want to have a nor from any Yid, not for free, not for pay. V'ilagabi Shmuel, it says even more. Afilu b'ratzen leisachrei. Even Yidden that willingly agreed to give it to him. They said, here, take, we'll give it, we'll rent you, we'll give you. He also didn't take. Yidden said, you didn't take anything from us, but also even when the Yidden would agree, he also didn't take anything from them. So it says this by Shmuel, it's even more than what it says by Moshe Rabbeinu. Going back to what we said before, that the Nevi'im were rich. So one of them mentioned before was Amos. Amos, it says, Vayan, Amos, Vayemer al Amatzye, Loi Novi Anoichi, V'loi Ben Novi Anoichi. I'm not a Novi, I'm not the son of a Novi, rather Ki Boiker Anoichi. Boiker means I'm a shepherd, taking care of a flock of sheep. Uboilis Shekomim, and I'm examining the Shekomim, which are trees, sycamore trees. What does this mean? The Metargim Rav Yosef, he explained the pasuk to mean, Are Mori Geisi Ano. I'm the owner, I'm the master of the flock of sheep. And V'shikmeli b'shfilas v'goyme. And also I have sycamore trees that I own in the valley. All the sycamore trees that you see in the valley belong to me. So over here you see that he was rich. Yaina, finally the last one the Gemara brings, it says by Yaina that he was rich. From where do we see this? The pasuk says, Vayitin schara. When the Eibusha tells Yaina to go to Nineveh, so he ran away to go to Tarshish. So it says he entered into the boat, and he paid first. He paid for this boat, and he went into the boat. What does this mean? Rabbi Yochanan says, Shenosan schara shosfina kula. He paid for the entire boat. Yaina was running away. He didn't want to wait for the boat to fill up with all of the travelers and then go. He says to the captain of the ship, I'll pay for this entire voyage. Let's go right now. And he paid for for everything and to leave right away. Rab Ruminus. So Rab Ruminus said, how much was the pay for the boat to leave? Dalit alafim dinri dava. 4,000 golden dinner. So this is the source for that fact that he was very rich. Rabbi Yechon. This is the market for the school of richness from after Yaina. Yaina was very rich.
Makes sense.
Rabbi Yechanan said, in the beginning, when Moshe Rabbeinu learned Torah, he would learn Torah, but he would forget everything that he learned. Until the Eibishter gave it to him as a gift that he was able to remember Torah. Shenema, as it says, Vayitin al Moshe. So the way to read it simply is Kechaloisei ledaber itay, that the Eibusha gave to Moshe Rabbeinu the Torah when he finished speaking to him. But it's darshan there Kekalo. The Eibusha gave them Kechalosei like Akala. The Eibusha gave him the Torah as a gift. So what does this mean that Moshe Rabbeinu was forgetting Torah? He didn't have a good memory. So it's not the pshat in the Gemara. The Rebbe explained this by Riches. It's actually in a Chanukah Sicha. The Rebbe explains that it means that because the Torah is Ein Sof, if you would talk about the Chachma of Torah, so then that's something that the Seichel of a person is a Keli for it. You don't need a special bracha to remember. But if the Torah is Ein Sof, so the Kelim of a person is not a Keli, the Seichel is not a Keli to contain Ein Sof in it. And therefore, they need a special matana for the Eibishter, that when you learn Torah, that the Ein Sof of the Eibishter, the infinity of the Eibishter and the Torah, should come into your Seichel and it should remain there. It should connect two opposites, Ein Sof with the gvul of a person's seichel, and that's the gift that the Eibishter gave Moshe Rabbeinu. Zok Teilige Mishnah, going back to the halachis of a person that made a neder that his friend should not have a no from him. The past few Mishnayos we learned that even when you made such a neder, there are still certain things that you're allowed to do for this person. You may feed this person, his wife, and his children. Even though it's this person that you made a neder that he may not have enough from you, he's the one that's obligated to feed them. But you may go ahead and feed his wife and children. So the Ran over here explains, we had a discussion before in the Gemara whether you're allowed to pay the loan of someone that is not allowed to have a nar from you. But the Ran says this case is different over there than over there. Over there we were talking about paying a loan that person owes. You're paying it for her sake. Or before, if you remember, we were talking about a person that's supposed to feed his wife and children and he left town and he's not fulfilling his obligation. And you go ahead and feed them, doing it for him. In other words, fulfilling his obligation. Here we're talking about something else that Ran says. Here we're talking about a person that's not trying to fulfill the other person's obligation. He's just pasha doing a mitzvah. He's doing a mitzvah of tzedakah. Mishnah is saying that you're allowed to give tzedakah to this person's wife and children. Just for l'shem mitzvah, not to fulfill the obligation that this person has. Not connected b'chlal to that. So that's allowed. But you should not feed his animals, bein tmeya, bein tahira, whether kosher and non-kosher animals, whether kosher animals. Rabbi Eliezer says, Zonas atmeya, you're allowed to feed the non-kosher animals he owns. Vein is Zonas atahira, but you're not allowed to feed the kosher animal that he owns. Amru loi. So the Chacham said to Rabbi Eliezer, Ma bein tmeya l'tahira. What's the difference between a non-kosher and kosher animal? So he said the difference is simple. Shatahira nafshel shmayim. When it dies, its soul goes to heaven. Interesting expression. It's in other words, you have no benefit from its soul. But v'gufa shaloi, the physical body of the animal is kosher. It's for you to eat. So if you're going to feed this person's animal, so you're giving him anah. You're fattening his animal that when he shachts it, he'll be able to have more what to eat. But a tmeya, however, the impure, the non-kosher animal, nafsha v'gufa l'shamayim. When it dies, so the owner has nothing of it. He can't eat it at all. So therefore, if you're fattening up his animal, you're not giving him any anah. The Ran's pshat in this Mishnah is that it can't be talking about feeding these animals for the basic foods that it needs to live. Because then even for a non-kosher animal, you can use the non-kosher animal for all kinds of activities, let's say a horse to ride on or whatever it is. So the fact that you're feeding it, you are giving this person anah, otherwise he would have to feed it. We're talking about fattening up the animal, giving it extra food, and that only applies to animals that you shecht in order to eat, but not animals that are used for labor or anything else. Amrullah, but still, the Chachamim responded to Rabbi Eliezer and said, Afatmeya, even regarding a non-kosher animal that you can't eat, nafshel l'shamayim v'gufa shaloi, still, when it dies, so the nefesh goes to heaven, but the body of the animal, you could have anah from it. She'im yirtze, because if you wish, you can sell the meat of this animal to goyim, or give it to eat to your dogs. So the more you fatten up this animal, the more he'll have to sell, the more he'll have to give to eat to his dogs. So therefore you are giving him anah. Sagt the Gemara, Omer Rav Yitzchak bar Chananya. Rav Yitzchak bar Chananya said, Omer Rav Huna, in the name of Rav Huna, Hamuder hana mechaverei. If there's a neder, you may not have a anah from your friend. Mutter lahasi loy bitoy, but you're allowed to marry off to him your daughter. That's not a problem. So the Gemara now will explain exactly what this means. Who exactly is asur of who in this neder, and what does it mean you can marry him off the daughter? Havi bar Rab Zera. So Rab Zera asked about this statement of Rabbi Yitzchak bar Chananya in the name of Rav Huna. But Maya Skiran, what are we talking about over here? If the case over here is avi kala asurun ala chasan, that it's the possessions, the properties of the father of the kala that are forbidden for the chasan to have anah from hare. But if so, how could he marry this person's daughter? The Gemara's assumption right now is we're talking about a daughter that is either a katana or a naira, and it's the father. Only the father is the one that has the right to marry her off. She belongs to him. So hare meiser loy, by him marrying off this daughter, he's giving to the chasen a shivcha l'shamshay. He's giving him a maid to serve him. I mean, the Gemara doesn't literally mean that the wife is a maid, but he's giving him his daughter, and she's his wife. And one of the things that a wife does for her husband is she serves him. I mean, we learned about this in the Gemara in Ksubis, right? That a wife has different obligations to serve and prepare things for the husband. So over here, if this is a girl that is still a naira, and the father is the one that's marrying her off, so then the father is the one that's giving this hana to the chasen. How could he, if the chasen may not have hana from him? So Ella, what are you going to say? What are we speaking about? Benichsei chasen. Asurin alavikala. It's in the reverse. That it's the possessions of the chasen, the money of the chasen, that the father of the kala may not have hana from. And therefore, what's the chiddush over here? That when the father gives the kala to the chasen, so now the chasen is going to feed this kala. The obligations of the husband to the wife. He's going to take care of his daughter. So if the husband wouldn't take care of his daughter, the father has the obligation to feed his daughter. So you're giving hana to the father by feeding his daughter. So that's the chiddush of what Rav Huna said, that you're allowed. Says the Gemara, but what's the chiddush? From what we learn in the Mishnah already, we know that this is allowed. Gedayla mizu amru. The Mishnah already said much more than this. Zan es ishtoi ve'es banav. Afal pi shu chayv mizaynoisan. So in the Mishnah it said that you're allowed to feed a person's wife and children even when they are by him, when they're in his possession, and he has the obligation to feed them. Still, you can go ahead and feed them. And va'at amrit, and over here, what was the chiddush of Rav Huna? Rav Huna is coming to say mutter lahase loy bitay, that you're allowed to marry off your daughter to this chassan, even though you can't have anah from the money of the chassan, that the chassan is allowed to feed the daughter. Of course. It's not such a chiddush, because over here, when he's marrying this kala, the kala already left the father's possession. Now it belongs to the chassan. If you're telling me while his daughter is still in his possession that you're allowed to feed his daughter, for sure, after he leaves and marries his chassan, the fact that the chassan is feeding the kala, that it's not an issue. So therefore the Gemara goes back to the previous pshat, that La'olam, so really, going back to what we said before, the case here that Rav Huna was speaking about is b'shenichse avi kala asurim ala chassan, that it was the possessions, the money of the father of the kala that were forbidden for the chassan to have anah from. The question was, how could the father give his daughter to this chassan? Well, bebitay begeres. We're speaking about his daughter, which is already a begeres. Begeres is usually at the age of 12 and a half, and therefore a midaito. When she gets married, it's not the father that marries her off. She's getting married on her own. The father is not giving his daughter to anybody. So therefore, he can marry her. The Ran actually adds another detail to this, according to one pshat in the Ran. When it says umidaita, what it's actually adding and saying that even if it would be bitoy begeres, but many times even a daughter which is a begeres, the daughter is not ready to get married without her father's consent. And then the chassan would have to convince the father to agree for him to marry his daughter. But the Gemara is adding, not only is she a begeres, but also it's midaita. The father is not getting involved. The chassan is not having any conversation with the father about this. It's midaita. She's agreeing to marry him without the father involved. And then he's allowed to marry her, and the father is not giving any anah to the chassan. So this last detail over here, in other words, the chiddush is that if you would need the father's consent, at least according to this pshat of the Ran, if you would need the father's consent, and the fact that the father is agreeing for you to marry his daughter, it still wouldn't be allowed. The father is giving it. Tanya nami hachi, we learned this in the Braisa as well. Hamudar anah mechavere, person that makes a neder not to have anah from his friend, asalahasi loy bitoy, so you can't marry him off your daughter, because you're giving him your daughter, it's your possession, it's if she's a naira. Avol masiyah bita begeres. What if she's a begeres? Umidaita, and it's just with her own consent, so then it has nothing to do with the father, so then you can marry her. Rabbi Yaakov said, Hamadir benoi litalmud Torah. A person that makes a neder for his son for the purpose to go and learn Torah. What does this mean? A person makes a neder, he sees that his son is busy with other things, his son is serving him, his son is working for him, and he wants his son to go learn Torah. So he makes a neder and he says, I'm not going to have any anah from my son doing work for me, because I want him not to be busy with me, I want him to go and learn Torah. But still, his son is still allowed to fill up a jug of water for him, and to light a candle for his father. These are small things. In other words, he didn't want his son to be busy to work for him and do things that are going to take up his time to not be able to learn Torah. But these small things, doesn't matter. He didn't include that in his neder. Rabbi Yitzchak says, even something more than this, even to prepare food for him, as long as it's something small, just to fry a little fish for him, he's also allowed to still do for his father. You made a neder that your friend may not have a nar from you, but still, you are allowed to give him to drink a cup of peace. What is this cup of peace? What is this referring to? Sahacha targimu, here in Bavel, they translated this to mean kais shalbeis ha'avel, the cup that is given to drink in the house of an avel, and it's called a kais shal shalom, brings shalom into the world. So that cup that is given in the house of the oval, that you're allowed to give even to a person that you said he's not allowed to have a nar from you. But Marava Amri, in Marava they said, Kais shal beis hamerchatz. There's the cup that you drink after you come out of the bathhouse. The way the Gemara describes in those times, a bathhouse was like a schwitz, and you came out and your body was like feeling shvach after this whole, and they would drink right after they came out of the bathhouse. That cup you're allowed to give them to drink, because this is considered to be something that's very small, something that it just is for the purpose of shalom, and it wasn't included in your neder. This is not part of your neder. There is actually a discussion in the Rishonim whether this means, I believe the Ran over here says, or some Rishonim say, that it doesn't mean that you're allowed to give him your own cup and your own drink to this person. What it means is that you're just handing it to him. The kais and the drink is there, you're just handing it to him. But other Rishonim say you're even allowed to give him from your own kais and your own drink, because this is considered to be something small for the purpose of shalom, and it's not included in your neder. The last thing, going back to what it said in the Mishnah, v'lo yazon as behemtai, you should not feed a person's behemoth that's not allowed to have a nar from you. And then there was the argument whether this is a kosher behemoth, a non-kosher animal. So Tanya, in the Braisa we learned, Yeshua ish uza oimer. Yeshua ish uza said, Zon avodav shevchaisav akananim. This person that's not allowed to have a nar from you, you're allowed to feed his slaves and his maids, that he has an obligation to feed himself. But so again, like I explained in the Mishnah, the Ran says it's not talking about the food that they need, Pasha, the basic food that they need to live. What it's talking about is to give them extra food, to give them more. Like in the Mishnah, when it spoke about feeding the animals and the non-kosher animals, it's not talking about the basic food. So over here as well, according to the Ran. V'lo yazin as behemtoi, but you should not feed his behemah. And he says here, like the opinion of the Chachamim, ben tmei, ben taira, whether kosher animals or not kosher animals. So why, regarding a eved and a shivcha, are you allowed to feed them? My time, and what's the reason? Avodav v'shivchaisav aknanim. His maid or servants, the goyish maids or servants, l'menacha rusa avidon. This is a very interesting expression in the Gemara here. According to the Gersa we have in this Gemara, menacha rusa avidon means when they pass away, you have no benefit of their physical bodies. The fact that you're going to feed them extra and they're going to become heavyweight, so what? When they pass away, you don't have any gain from this, so therefore you're not giving him any anah. Not only that, if you feed them too much, you're actually causing the person a loss. So his avadim are going to be lazy, they're going to eat so much, they're going to work even less. That's one shot. But the Quran does bring another gears in the Gemara that it's read, L'menakerusa avdinan. Menakerusa means that they're made to work. They're made to work, so therefore feeding them extra is pointless. In our case, menacharusa avida, menacharusa literally means when something is killed, it's cut open and it dies. Now, in other words, the Eved Shivcha lives out his life and he eventually dies, and that's it. And after he's dead, you have no purpose of using him. But behemah, however, when it comes to a behemah, lepetume avida. A behemah is made to fatten up, and after you shecht it, so you're able to eat from it. And like the Gemara said, even a non-kosher animal, you're able to sell it to a guy or to give it to the dogs, and therefore you're not allowed to fatten it up. A person you're not allowed to have enough from.